It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Good to have you on Lawell Leadership and Mobility TV. This show focuses on personal development and self-improvement, relocation, and also allied topics that are related to personal development and self-improvement, occasioning expert and professionals who are added in this topic, offering disruptive yet constructive mindset conversations that is going to transform your mindset from where you are to where you need to be. We always emphasize the need to embrace personal development and self-improvement along the course of life because we come to realize the importance of doing so. Now, all of the innate gift sets, the potential that lie within us can only come to the fore to be enjoyed and also harnessed properly if we can only look inwards, ask the right questions that we need to ask, and I guarantee you the answers will always come. Now, what to do with the answers is what that matters to you and to also life itself. This is the mission and the focus of Lawell by Mobile Steven. We like to provide disruptive mindset conversations that is going to transform your life 360-degree as you take actions where necessary. Today, I have Simon Vogt, who is a philosopher, an educator, and a writer on the show with me. Now we'll be talking about the masculine gender and all that goes with the male folks in our society. Now we know that, and this is a very important issue we also need to be addressing at such time as this. And so Simon Vogt and I, we're going to really have a great time on the show moving forward. Thank you for joining me on the show once again, Simon Vogt.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Amabala. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure having you on the show. My question to you, first of all, is you aim to popularize positive narratives which allow men to break free of the man box and take charge of forging their own future. Now, what are some of the important things you'd like to share with my audience in this regard?
Sure, thank you very much. So yes, I've been working as a philosopher and ethicist in the academia for a number of years, and I really wanted to take some of the topics that we talk about at universities kind of out to the world and maybe use them in ways that can help people improve their lives as well. And I thought that, well, the topic of masculinity is just so all over everyone's minds right now. So, and I feel like I've had a number of thoughts about this already in the academia and wanted to share them with people. And I think definitely you kind of hit the nail on the head in there, because I think that what we really need is some more positive narratives that will help men actually deal with the challenges that the modern world presents them with. And like you say, break out of certain kind of predetermined traditional ways of seeing masculinity that we label together as the man box. And I think that it is particularly important because there are so many voices out there that criticize men for various failings or for various things that have been, that they have now inherited from our patriarchal past and they still benefit from naturally in all this. And those voices tend to be very critical, and they tend to be very rightly so impatient with certain things and unhappy with the way that men are behaving. But I think that while this is very important naturally to have those voices, we also need more positive narratives that are kind of cool and empowering and make men feel like they don't need to maybe modify some ways that they are behaving because they're horrible people and they're bad and they're toxic and everything needs to change about them. But because there is an opportunity to be better, and there's an opportunity to do something that will make their lives better as well. So I think that many of the narratives that we have right now, they have a very strong focus on men needing to stop some horrible things that they're doing, rather than presenting this as an opportunity to start doing better things. And I think one of the kind of biggest and most promising narratives that kind of is there, but is not really, I think, brought up, it's not really positive enough, is the narrative that you can be anything. You don't need to stick to certain social roles that have been dreamt up by some past men and other people that kind of require you to perform your social role and be, be the protector, provider, be this masculine, I know, security provider for your family, for your country, and whatever else. But you can just be anything, pretty much. You can decide what your fate will be. And here I think very often it seems like this narrative is kind of present, but it's very much in this kind of way of, you can be anything, but you really need to stop doing all of those horrible things that men have been doing all this time. And it's kind of the accent is on those horrible things. And I think we need to shift this narrative a little bit. We need to shift it towards like, guys, you can be anything. You know, maybe stop doing some of those horrible things, but seriously, you can be anything. And I'd really like to work on this. I'd really like to kind of show men that they can really pursue so much more than what, you know, the real men or the alpha males or whatever else are meant to be. And I also quite like to tie it with some other narratives. So, for example, um, I don't know. I think that there is some kind of like rebellious streak to this. Like if we phrase these sort of things as like rebelling against some oppression that men have been, you know, subject to in the past. And it's kind of like almost, I know, punkish, you know, like I don't know. There's this great song by Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but am I allowed to swear on this show? Basically the line in there goes on just like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me and all this. And basically it's just this kind of like rebellious streak of we have been told what we're meant to do, how we're meant to be, and like this is this box, you need to fit in it, and this is the sort of things you need to do, you can't get out of it. And like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to be a rebel. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that's a great narrative as well, I think, that can help men reach out of the man box. Um, and finally, I've been kind of looking into just like talking to men about what they like themselves. Because very often it turns out that men don't really like many of those things that come with the man box. I actually started a bunch of discussions about this on Reddit and elsewhere, and like I have a video in production on that topic as well. But it's kind of just like just asking guys, hey, like which parts of the man box do you actually like are quite happy you don't need to do? And it turns out that like so many guys, like they couldn't care less about things such as I don't know, being interested in sports, which is this manly thing, or being like into cars or DIY or all of those like little things that are associated with being a man. But they're also not really interested in many other things like, I don't know, hierarchies and constantly needing to kind of prove or like put yourself somehow or gain status or put yourself on a hierarchy ladder or something like this. That's a very manly thing as well. Or things like, I mean, in terms of sexuality, just as well, like men are meant to be those kind of always horny creatures that always want to have more sexual partners and sex in general. But so many men say that they're just not that interested, frankly. And just hearing those voices and giving them a platform in which they can say, hey, you know, there's all of those boxes that you technically are meant to tick in order to qualify as a real man according to the man box. Like I really don't fancy those. Like I like to tick some of them, maybe, but not all of them. And I think that the more we allow people like this to speak, and the more we amplify their voices, the more other men will go like, huh, well, maybe I also don't want to be all that. So yeah, so that's kind of the narratives that I'm trying to share through my platform, kind of, focusing on the positivity. You can be anything. And like, I don't know, there is this oppressive system, rebel against this. And also like, platforming all of the men who just say there's those things that they don't fancy doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's what we'll be focusing on today. Now, the platform for the men to really find the voice once again in the society. Now,
Mhm.
so what are some of the missing, or what are we missing out on modern masculinity and the changing roles of men in the society in terms of what they prioritize?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the role of men today is changing a lot because the world has changed. The world has changed massively. And I think that it's kind of a shame that a lot of people desperately try to stick to the old ways, which have just kind of become a bit maladaptive. I mean, the world has changed, like I say. And for example, the most basic way in which it has changed is that we have all become much more individualistic, and the world has allowed for it because we don't just need each other that much anymore. Like if I didn't want to, I wouldn't have to leave the house. I can order my food home. I can do all my shopping home. I feel safe in here. I can have a job in here. I don't need anything and anyone. And that's obviously an extreme example. But I think what really is important in there is that men very often saw themselves in the past as performing certain social roles. They felt needed for those roles. They were needed in terms of protecting and providing for women, for example, and they felt needed by their communities in certain ways and stuff like that. And what they typically tended to provide is for those needs, for those kind of like basic needs of everyone else. So I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's pyramid of needs, but is this kind of the idea is that there's a human needs can be represented in this pyramid where the most basic needs are at the bottom. So that's our just need for like we need air to breathe and water to drink and shelter over our head. We need just basic safety, so we're not in danger all the time. Then we have like psychological needs. So we have our need for love and belonging and maybe some esteem. And then on the top, we have the need for self-actualization. So creating things and stuff like that. And the idea is simple. You cannot do the top things if the bottom of your pyramid is crumbling. So what I think, why this is interesting is I think that in the past, basically men saw themselves very often as ensuring the stability of this pyramid. They were the ones who provide you the stuff that allows that you to, have, I don't know, shelter over your head, food to eat, and whatever else. They protect you from all the danger that you're safe so that you can thrive and you can do all of those things at the top of the pyramid. But the truth is that like nobody needs that now. I mean, women can do that for themselves. Nobody, like, they don't need men to do it for them. Most people can do it for themselves in our affluent Western societies, at least. And, we're generally quite safe. I mean, when have you last heard about Vikings raiding people's villages or something? So I think that modern masculinity presents men with this problem that the stuff that they were needed for in the past, they're just not needed for anymore. So there's this kind of existential crisis, like, what am I for? And I think many men feel this because they feel like the stuff that they like were told that they are meant to provide others with, turns out nobody wants it. And it's really confusing. And I think that it takes some strength and resolve to figure out that, it's well, maybe we need to focus on something else. And I think it's really important that men think about this in terms of, well, maybe you might not be needed for anything, as in people can get those things themselves, but you can still be wanted. People can still want to be with you because you're awesome. People can still want to be with you or like have you around just because you make their lives better, because you bring something exciting to their lives and stuff like that. And I think that's potentially also confusing because in the past, there's kind of one way to be needed, be the protector, provider, and all that, maybe a couple small different ways. But there's a million ways to be wanted. There's a million ways in which you can make people like you and want to have you around. And I mean, it's harder and it's confusing. And I think that, yeah, we need more of those kind of positive narratives, I think, that show men how to do it because yeah, we can't rely on those old narratives that taught men how to be needed. They're not needed anymore. Not in the same way.
Thanks for sharing that with my audience and Simon. Now, talking about the crisis of masculinity, which you just earlier shared on. Today, we've come to realize that young adults or young adult men are the ones who often are the most affected by this crisis. I hope you agree with me on that. Now, some of them, they resort to drug use and violent incidents come up. So how can we tackle this?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is only goes to show how many men are confused and cannot find themselves, and they use various other ways of, I don't know, numbing their pain or pursuing some sort of semblance of happiness in life. And well, we know that many of those are dysfunctional, unfortunately. And I am very happy to see that there are more and more organizations that actually help such men. Um, and I think that it's a shame that we are still amidst narratives in which, when such men say that they are struggling, that they are suffering, that they have problems, people don't listen to them. People say, what are you talking about? You're a male, you're privileged. What's your problem? And it's really sad because on one hand, we tell men that one of the main things that they should really learn right now is to be vulnerable, is to express their emotions and be in tune with their emotions. And yet, when those men do it, we just tell them to, well, essentially, we tell them to man up and just kind of further the same sort of problematic narratives of the past. And I think that's a shame because those men are really struggling. I mean, nobody who's not struggling ends up abusing drugs and ending up in the situations that we're describing. And we don't, I mean, there's no point vilifying those men. They need help. And I think that it's great that there are increasingly more and more organizations that do this. There are more voices that speak to the need of this help. And I think that we need to kind of break through with this a little bit more, because I think it's still very common for people to have this kind of zero-sum game mentality when it comes to helping men or helping women. We still acknowledge that it's very important that we need to help women, and women are still disadvantaged and discriminated against in so many ways. But it's not a zero. We can both help women and also help men. And so often it seems like when someone raises the point that maybe those guys need some help as well, somebody else answers, "Oh, no, 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 we can't focus that because women need help more." I'm just like, well, sure, but I mean, that doesn't mean that we cannot do two things at the same time, right? We can do two things at the same time, I think, and we should focus on that more.
Yeah, interestingly, we all hear that line, man up, you need to man up in the society. But really, what does it take to be a man in today's society?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Is I think that, like I said before, the world is massively changing, and one of the ways in which it is changing is towards greater equality. And I think that increasingly, to be a man is just to be a human, really. And there's less and less of a difference between what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman or person of any or no gender. And I like to use this kind of, I don't know, I made up a hashtag, and I'm hoping that one day it will go viral, which is, there's the hashtag not all men, and that's, horrible in many ways and all that. But I think we need a hashtag not only men. As in, there's so many things that we used to think that only men should do. Not only men should do them, everyone should do them. And I think that in terms of being what does it mean to be a man today? Well, there's certain kind of masculine qualities of old that men can still absolutely kind of perfect and become great at. But I think it's so important that we don't try to, I don't know, safeguard them and say that, I don't know, only men can do this, or only men can, I know, protect, provide, and whatever else, if we need to stick to those old things. But instead, say like, men's role might be, for example, I think that's a great narrative as well. Men's role can be to take all of those great things about masculinity and just share it with others. Maybe we need to use those old concepts in new ways. For example, we might not need protecting from, I don't know, physical danger quite as much, because we don't face that much physical danger. We might not need providing for our basic needs, such as earning enough money to have to eat. Most people wouldn't need this right now, but what we do need is we need protecting from emotional dangers, for example. So if I have a partner and her boss is a completely horrible to her, she doesn't need me to go to the company and punch him in the face. She needs me to protect her by providing her emotional support. She needs me to protect her by helping her work through all of those things. And she needs me to provide her with the kind of stability in the home and things like this. So we can still take all of those old concepts and just kind of apply them in new ways. And there's many other things that have been traditionally associated with masculinity that I think modern men, can take and just share it with other people. So, it was a manly thing to take risks. That's great to take good, risks and be daring and do I know, excellent things. And we should teach other people to do that as well. Men were always great at creating order and structures and like hierarchies and things like this. Let's like share it with everyone. And like I say, don't safeguard it. Don't say it's just men that can be like that. But let's share on all those amazing things about masculinity with others. I think that's what it means to be a man. It's kind of to share your masculinity with others as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Simon Falk, for sharing your thought once again. Simon, do you think there is a shift in gender norms and power structure in the society? If you agree with me, or if you think that is really true, how do you see men fit in at this time of their lives? Do they struggle trying to fit in? Now, what is really the problem, and how can we really address it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big question. And I think I was already touching on this earlier when saying that, this whole men being needed is just no more. Men are uncertain how they fit in because men are just not needed anymore. And this deal of men providing everyone else with the basic needs or fulfilling their basic needs is just It's just not there anymore. And so many people talk about the crisis of masculinity. Again, I think that it's a bit of a useless phrase because it's just so negative again. And I mean, there's been a crisis of masculinity since forever, if you look at historical records. I think it's more important to focus on the narrative, on a positive narrative. And I think that when it comes to those gender norms and structures, we should talk about, I don't know, a masculinity revolution, like something exciting, something fun, because those gender norms and structures are changing. And they're changing, I think, for the better. Or at least, we have the power to change them the way we want. And it is true that some people are not coping with this change. Like you said, young boys and men have a problem with drugs and violence and other things. But we can support them through this, and we need to acknowledge that this is a systemic problem, that this is a problem that those people are facing not necessarily because they are evil, but because they have grown up in a society that has taught them those old gender norms and those old gender structures, and it has taught them that in order to, I don't know, succeed in life, they need to stick to those old things. And now they go out to the world, and it turns out that was false. That was not right. And until this day, I mean, any time you turn on, I don't know, a James Bond movie or something like this, I mean, that's what it teaches you. It teaches you a outdated, model of masculinity. Um, so I think that, um, yeah, we need to kind of educate people on the fact that those things have changed. Those gender norms are not there as strongly anymore. Again, fit those narratives in which you can break out of them and explore what you need for yourself or you want for yourself. And yeah, I mean that's kind of part of what I want to do with my work as well. I want to create content and narratives that help people do that and help them see that there are new exciting things that they can do once they got rid of those old gender norms.
Simon, I think, or I believe that we are in the era of self-awareness. Many people out in society today, especially the women folks, we're getting to know ourselves, getting to identify who we truly are. And now we believe that what a man can do, a woman can do also. I think it's a form of balance. And in some way, it has helped even the male folks when we come to think of it, having a woman to come out and support the man in the society, don't you think this is a form of balance, or should there be a power struggle in that?
No, absolutely. And I think that men should also allow themselves to kind of be supported as well, because it's been such a trope that you always need to earn more than your partner, for example, and things like this. And it's like one of the greatest achievements of equality for men as well, which is that like men don't need to put so much work into everything all the time. They don't need to earn the money for the whole family and things like this. They can also pursue their own interests rather than spend all of their times just kind of making sure that the family stays alive. And I think this is, again, something that we should draw attention to. And I think it's absolutely fantastic, all the things that the equality movement that has been very strongly driven by women, all the achievements that it has made are absolutely great for men as well. Yes, absolutely. Yes, definitely men have to give up a fair bit of unearned privilege in order to, for the system to work. But, it was unearned privilege. At some point, we need to kind of face up to the fact that we should have never had it in the first place. And it's hard. It's not easy. It always is the case. Like many feminist writers say that, giving up unearned privilege feels like, I don't know, a horrible injustice to people. Again, maybe we need better narratives that help people with realizing what's going on. But I think those narratives really need to focus on what gender equality, what is positive about gender equality for men, and what things they're actually gaining from it as well. And I think when we do that, I mean, it's so much easier to be okay with a change if you perceive this change as something you wanted yourself, something that benefits you and all that. So again, I think it comes back to the first question you're asking, which is we need good narratives that will help people see that.
Simon, I like us to get personal a bit here. Can you tell my audience the traits women find attractive in men?
Oh, that is a question I find often quite frustrating, because I think that everybody means something different when they say that. or I mean, first of all, everyone is different. So there is no such thing as all women wanting the same thing of a man. Um, Everybody is different, but I mean, there might be some trends. But I think what's frustrating about this is that very often men and women understand this question quite differently, because women tend to think of it in terms of what would make for a good long-term partner. And most men who find it really difficult who find dating very frustrating and have either never had a partner or maybe are struggling with finding partners and find themselves in kind of, psychological distress because of this, they're not thinking about finding a long-term partner. They're thinking about getting to the stage in which someone even notices them. And I think that it's a very different question for what makes a good partner versus for what makes you feel like you want to actually hang out with this person for today, at least, or what makes you kind of, if they come and chat you up in a pub, will you actually be open to chatting with them? And I think that people understand it a bit differently. So. It's really two questions. It's the question of what makes for a good partner and what makes for someone you're in the moment attracted to. And I think that when women talk about what makes for a good partner, they say things like, he needs to be emotionally intelligent, he needs to be supportive, committed to equality as well, and all this. All of those things are what makes a guy a keeper. But really, when we talk about the kind of in the moment attraction, I mean, I think it comes down to, right. I mean, you need to have good looks, definitely, and that's unfortunate, but that's still true. No unrealistic standards, but guys, take care of yourself, exercise, make sure that you're presentable. You definitely need to be on top of life. You don't need to have a Lamborghini and I know an amazing mansion, but you do need to have like a stable job, a place to live, enough money to buy her a dinner, and basically seem like someone who, well, again, is on top of his life. But I think the two things that are most attractive and make people kind of go like, that's the guy, is having some sort of passion, just being excited about something. It needs to be, I don't know, any kind of hobby, a job that you're really excited about or something like that. And ideally, it would have to be something that has a potential of matching what women find interesting as well. So I don't know, many guys are very excited about games, but not many women are. So if you're really passionate about gaming, then it's probably less likely. I mean, there will be a pool of women who will be really excited about that as well, but it's probably quite small. So having some sort of passion that's just like, I don't know, be a musician, be really great at your job, be like really into hiking or traveling or whatever else. Um, and finally, I mean, the thing that everyone talks about is just confidence, just feeling like, I know you believe in yourself, and that's very different from feeling entitled, I think. But it's this confidence to kind of walk into the room and just feel like, I don't know, you're great, and people will like you. And it's not easy to develop sometimes, especially not easy to develop for people who have been struggling with mental health issues or maybe have doubted themselves or their lives. But it is possible, and I'd like to think that some of the content that I'm creating will help guys develop these sort of things. And there's certainly a lot of other content out there that might help with that.
Simon, do you have any exciting news you'd like to share with my audience? Do you have any projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this project I call the Man's Compass. And it's basically the idea is to provide guys with a set of, I don't know, just general guidelines and ideas for how to be a man in the modern society. For what we were talking about before, which is that many men feel like the rug has been pulled from under their feet because they're not needed anymore, and some of the old ways to be are just not valid anymore. Well, what I want to do in my project is to write texts and create videos that will help guys find new ways to find themselves in the world. So I've got a YouTube channel. I've got a Medium account where I'm writing things. I've got my own website as well. That's simonfogg.org. And I have some presence on social media. So you can find me on TikTok, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and other places like this. I do tend to get into Reddit discussions occasionally as well. So you can probably find me there at some point.
Absolutely. Wish you best of luck, Simon, in that project and in the subsequent ones that you embark upon. Do you have any parting words, any interesting word or motivation you'd like to share with the audience?
Thank you. Yes. There's something that you mentioned before, which I wanted to pick up on, which you said that in your podcast, you want to encourage people to know themselves, to really, and I think that this is, and as a philosopher, this is something that like one of the main themes that I want to encourage people to do as well. It's actually a phrase that Plato has popularized already in the 3rd century BC. And it's meant to be something that Socrates has himself said, that knowing yourself, this kind of deep reflection of what is it, who is it that you actually are, what is it that you actually want, is really important. And I think that this is something I would really want to encourage all guys to do. Don't listen so much to what anyone else wants of you. Don't listen to the people who tell you what you should think. Follow those people who encourage you to think for yourself. Think for yourself. Figure out what it is that you want. And I think that's probably also one of the better ways to break out of the man box.
Thank you once again, Simon Falk, a philosopher, educator, and writer. It's been great having you on the show. Share your insight and topic about masculinity, how the society is addressing these issues, and now we can go forward from there. Thank you for sharing your thoughts once again. My audience are really inspired and also have a transformed mindset moving forward. We wish you the best of luck in all the projects that you embark upon once again, Simon. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any of these episodes of the show, you can catch up on any cross promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms to bump into online. You can just simply search for Live Well Lift by Mobile Steven, and you can be assured that you're going to have a great time listening to the show as expert and professionals share disruptive mindship conversations on topics and subjects that is related to personal development and self-improvement. I'm Mobile Steven. I'd like you to always stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.